You'll need at least $500,000 per child for college, Dad proclaimed at the holiday dinner, pointing his fork at me like a judge passing sentence. And considering your career choices, better start that fund now, assuming you can even afford to have children. The call from Dean Morrison wasn't about my hypothetical children's tuition, it was about the new computer science building I'd just funded at the university my father claimed I'd never be able to afford for my own kids. The annual Brennan family Christmas dinner had all the warmth of a corporate performance review. Dad presided from the head of the table in our Greenwich home, dispensing financial wisdom and life judgment with equal authority. As the founder of Brennan Capital Management, he'd turned everything into a lesson about compound interest and poor life choices, specifically, mine. Honestly, Amelia, my stepmother Janet added, cutting her prime rib with surgical precision. Your father's just being realistic. Social work is noble, but nobility doesn't pay for Princeton. Or Yale, my brother Connor chimed in, fresh from his Morgan Stanley bonus announcement. Kid's going to need at least $600,000 for a decent education by then. That's what, 30 years of your salary? 25, I corrected, taking a sip of water. My phone, silenced in my pocket, vibrated with another call from the university. They were eager to discuss the dedication ceremony details. Even worse, Dad shook his head. See, this is what I mean about planning. When I was your age, I'd already mapped out Connor and Melissa's college funds. Had spreadsheets, projections, investment strategies. And look how well we turned out, my sister Melissa laughed, flashing the Cartier watch her hedge fund husband had given her for Christmas. Maybe if Amelia had studied finance instead of, what was it again? Psychology? Social work, I repeated. Right. Helping feelings. She made air quotes. Super lucrative field. Someone has to, I said mildly. Sure, but why did it have to be you? Dad set down his wine glass with the deliberate motion of someone about to deliver a lecture. You had every advantage. Best prep schools, perfect SAT scores, legacy admission to Wharton, which I graduated from. With a degree you refuse to use. Instead, you're at some nonprofit making, what? $50,000 a year? 62. God, Connor whistled. I spent more than that on my car. The point is, Dad continued, life is about building wealth. Generational wealth. How can you provide for children when you can barely provide for yourself? I do fine. Fine isn't enough. His voice rose, the same tone that terrorized junior analysts at his firm. Do you know what Yale costs now? $90,000 a year. By the time you have kids, if someone actually marries you despite your financial situation, it'll be double that, triple, Janet corrected, always helpful. Don't forget inflation. Exactly. Triple. So let's say you somehow have 2 kids. That's over $1 million just for undergraduate. Not counting prep school, tutors, enrichment programs, tennis lessons, Melissa added. Sailing camp. European trips, Connor contributed. Can't have culturally deprived children. All essential for proper development, Dad nodded. We're talking 2, maybe $3 million per child for a competitive upbringing. On your nonprofit salary. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from my assistant, Princeton called too. They're upset Yale got the bigger donation. Maybe she won't have kids, Janet suggested with false sympathy. Not everyone needs to be a parent. Of course she'll have kids, Dad dismissed. The question is whether they'll have opportunities or struggle like what? I asked quietly. Like people without proper financial planning. State schools, community colleges, limited options. Is that what you want for your hypothetical children? State schools aren't. Please. He waved dismissively. Don't give me that every education is valuable nonsense. We both know where the real opportunities come from. The connections, the network, the prestige. You think Connor got his Morgan Stanley position from a state school? I thought he got it because you called in a favor, I said. Connor's face flushed. I earned that position. After Dad's phone call. Connections are part of earning, Dad said smoothly. Which your children won't have if you can't afford the right schools. It's a cycle, Amelia. Poverty begets poverty. I'm not in poverty. You're in nonprofit, Melissa laughed. Same thing with better PR. This is exactly why I push you, Dad continued. It's not cruelty, it's mathematics. Let me break it down. He launched into his favorite activity, projecting my financial inadequacy over the next 40 years. Cost of living increases, education inflation, healthcare expenses, retirement shortfalls. He had spreadsheets on his phone, because of course he did. See? He showed me a graph. By age 60, you'll have negative net worth. Negative. And that's without children. Add kids. He shook his head. Financial suicide. Robert, my mother said quietly from her corner of the table. The divorce had been finalized for 10 years, but she still came to family dinners, a ghost of our former life. Maybe ease up. I'm trying to help her, Linda. Someone has to inject reality into her fantasy world. The fantasy where I help at-risk kids? I asked. The fantasy where helping at-risk kids pays for your own kids' futures, he corrected. Noble poverty is still poverty. My phone lit up with an email. The subject line was visible, Brennan Foundation Computer Science Building, Dedication Plans. Speaking of children, Janet pivoted with practiced grace. Connor's girlfriend is pregnant. The table erupted in congratulations. Connor beamed, accepting backslaps and cheek kisses. Dad actually smiled, a rare occurrence that transformed his face. Now that's planning, he said approvingly. 28, established career, proper financial foundation. When's the wedding? June, Connor said. Small ceremony in the Hamptons. Perfect. And you've started the college fund? Already set up. Aggressive growth portfolio. Should hit $1 million by the time they're 18. That's my boy. Dad raised his glass. To the next generation of Brennan's success. Everyone toasted. I lifted my water glass half-heartedly. Don't look so glum, Amelia, Melissa said. You can be the fun aunt. The one who babysits because she has no kids of her own. Or money, Connor added helpfully. Maybe by then she'll have come to her senses, Janet suggested. It's not too late for business school. I have an MBA, I reminded them. From Wharton. The school Dad went to. Remember? Fat lot of good it's doing you, Dad muttered. Waste of tuition. Another email popped up. This time from Harvard, following up on your transformative gift. You know what kills me? Dad continued, back in lecture mode. The opportunity cost. Do you understand what you could have built with your advantages? The wealth you could have accumulated? Like Connor and Melissa? Exactly. Connor's on track to make partner. Melissa married well. They understand building for the future. I am building for the future. Whose future? Those charity cases you work with. Yes, actually. And what about your own future? Your own children's futures? Or are you planning to raise them on food stamps and good intentions? Robert, Mom tried again. What? Someone needs to say it. She's 32, Linda. 32 with nothing to show for it but a bleeding heart and empty bank account. I have $62,000 a year, he finished. We know. You know what I made at 32? 7 figures. Because I understood that money isn't evil, it's opportunity. I never said money was evil. Your choices say it. This nonprofit martyrdom, living in that tiny apartment, driving that ancient car, my car works fine. Everything's fine with you. Fine isn't excellence. Fine isn't success. Fine is what people say when they've given up. Dean Morrison called again. This time I let it go to voicemail. Who keeps calling you? Mom noticed. Everything okay? Just work stuff. On Christmas? Dad scoffed. What kind of emergency does a nonprofit have? Someone's feelings need immediate attention? Something like that. This is what I mean, he turned to the table. No boundaries. No real business sense. Probably some client crisis that could wait until Monday, but she'll drop everything because she can't say no. Helping people is literally my job. Your job should be building wealth. Creating security. Preparing for the future instead of. My phone rang again. This time the screen showed Forbes magazine. For God's sake, answer it, Janet said irritably. This is ridiculous. I stood and walked to the foyer, answering on the 4th ring. Ms. Brennan? This is David Chen from Forbes. I'm sorry to call on Christmas, but we're running a story about your donations and wanted a quote. I told the foundation no publicity. I understand, but $50 million is hard to keep quiet. Especially when it's going to multiple universities. Yale's announcement leaked. $50 million? I kept my voice low. Between Yale, Harvard, Princeton, and your father's alma mater, yes. The Brennan Foundation's educational initiative is the largest anonymous donation in a decade. Though I guess it's not anonymous anymore. I need to go. Just one question, why computer science programs specifically? Your background is in social work. Because kids from my programs deserve the same opportunities as everyone else. Technology is the future. They should have access to it. And the name? The Brennan Foundation? I looked back at the dining room where my father was undoubtedly calculating my lifetime earnings. Family tradition. Brennans are supposed to care about education. After hanging up, I stood in the foyer, looking at the family photos lining the walls. Dad's MBA graduation. Connor at Morgan Stanley. Melissa's wedding at the St. Regis. Me at my nonprofit, surrounded by kids, the only photo where everyone was genuinely smiling. Everything all right? Mom appeared in the doorway. Fine. You keep saying that word. She studied me carefully. But something's different. You seem calm, despite your father's usual performance. He means well. He means to control. There's a difference. She glanced back toward the dining room. You know, you remind me of your grandmother. Dad's mom? The one who died before I was born. Eleanor Brennan. Your father doesn't talk about her much. She gave away most of the family money before she died. Drove your grandfather crazy. Gave it away? Schools, hospitals, community programs. She believed wealth meant responsibility, not just accumulation. Your father never forgave her for not leaving him more. He's never mentioned this. Of course not. It doesn't fit his narrative. But she'd have liked you, I think. Choosing purpose over profit. Mom, Ms. Brennan? A different voice. Dad's assistant, who apparently worked even on Christmas. There are several reporters at the gate. Security wants to know if they should call the police. Reporters? Mom frowned. I'll handle it. I walked back to the dining room where Dad was mid-spreadsheet, showing Connor optimal investment strategies for his unborn child. False alarm, he asked without looking up. Or did someone's feelings get hurt on Christmas? Actually, I need to leave. Of course you do. He finally looked at me. Running away when conversations get difficult. Typical. Not running. Just need to handle something. What could possibly? His phone buzzed. Then Connor's. Then Melissa's. Then Janet's. What the hell? Connor stared at his screen. Google alert just. Amelia, why is your name in a Forbes article? What article? Dad grabbed Connor's phone. His face went through several expressions as he read. This is a mistake. Has to be. What's it say? Melissa demanded. It says? Dad's voice failed. He tried again. It says Amelia donated $50 million to various universities, including Wharton. That's impossible, Janet said immediately. She makes $60,000 a year. 62, I corrected. This is a prank, Connor decided. Fake news. Has to be. But Dad was still reading, his face growing paler. The Brennan Foundation. Established 5 years ago. Focused on education access for underserved communities. Assets of? He stopped. Assets of what? Melissa grabbed the phone. Holy shit. Sorry, Mom. But, holy shit. Language, Mom said mildly, though she was smiling. $300 million? Connor read over Melissa's shoulder. That can't be right. It's actually $340 million, I said. Market's been good this year. The room went silent. Not the awkward silence of family dinners, but the absolute silence of shattered assumptions. How? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. The same way you did it. Just quieter. But you work at a non-profit. I do. By choice. But I also invested. Early and well. Invested in what? Technology mostly. Some biotech. Cryptocurrency before it was mainstream. Boring stuff you wouldn't understand. I founded a hedge fund. And I paid attention. Turns out, those at-risk kids you mock? Some of them grow up to create unicorn startups. They remember who believed in them early. You're saying you made hundreds of millions from believing in people you dismissed. From investing in potential you couldn't see. From understanding that wealth isn't just about accumulation, it's about impact. The donations, Mom said slowly. $50 million to universities? Specifically for computer science programs. Full rides for kids from backgrounds like the ones I work with. The Brennan Scholars Program. Using our name? Janet sputtered. My name? I'm a Brennan too, remember? Or did you forget while calculating my inadequacy? Dean Morrison called again. This time I answered on speaker. Ms. Brennan, I apologize for the persistence, but the reporters. Tell them the family is processing the news. We'll have a statement tomorrow. Of course. And Ms. Brennan? Thank you. The computer science building will change lives. That's the idea. I hung up to find my family staring at me like I'd grown a second head. A building? Connor managed. You donated a building? For buildings. One at each university. Plus endowments for faculty and scholarships. But why hide it? Melissa asked. Why let us think? Think what? That I was a failure? That I'd condemned my hypothetical children to community college? That I was wasting my Wharton education? We were trying to help, Dad said weakly. You were trying to control. To make me fit your definition of success. Well, surprise, I found my own. $300 million, he repeated. How long? The foundation? 5 years. The wealth building? Longer. Turns out social workers meet interesting people. Entrepreneurs before they're successful. Innovators before they're famous. I invested in people, not just portfolios. And the nonprofit work? Continues. Because that's where I find the next generation of founders. The kids you think can't afford college? They're building the companies your grandchildren will work for. This changes everything, Janet said faintly. Does it? I'm still the same person you lectured an hour ago. Same values, same choices, same life. The only difference is now you know I can afford it. Don't be flip, Dad found his voice. This is significant. Is it? Or is it just money? I thought you'd be happy. I took your advice, built wealth, planned for the future, secured my hypothetical children's education. Isn't that what you wanted? I wanted you to tell me. When? Between lectures about my poor life choices? During spreadsheet presentations about my inevitable poverty? While you explained why my children would suffer for my nobility? He had no answer. The irony, I continued, is that you were right about one thing. Money is opportunity. I just used it differently than you would have. Giving it away isn't using it, Connor protested. Isn't it? Those buildings will educate thousands. Those scholarships will create doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs. That's not waste, that's investment. Just in people instead of percentages. But your children will be fine. Better than fine. They'll grow up knowing wealth is a tool, not a scorecard. They'll understand that success means lifting others, not just yourself. Easy to say when you have hundreds of millions, Melissa muttered. Easy to do when you remember why you built it. Dad, you asked why I wasted my Wharton education on social work. This is why. Because I learned that the best investments aren't always in markets, they're in potential. My phone buzzed. Princeton this time, Harvard announced $15 million. Can we discuss increasing your commitment? I have to go, I said. Apparently, there's a bidding war for naming rights. Amelia, Dad stood. Wait. I don't know what to say. You could start with I was wrong. Work up from there. I was trying to protect you. From struggle, from difficulty, from life. I know. But I didn't need protection. I needed trust. How can I fix this? I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who'd built wealth but forgotten its purpose. Who'd measured everything in dollars but missed the value. Donate, I said simply. What? You have 50 million sitting in tax havens. Donate it. Not for the write-off or the recognition, but because kids need opportunity more than you need another yacht. That's our wealth. No, Dad. That's your scorecard. Question is, do you want to win the game or change it? I left them processing that challenge and walked out into the Connecticut snow. Behind me, I could hear the explosion of voices, arguments, justifications, recalculations of my worth now that my worth was known. Tomorrow, the stories would run. The Brennan Foundation would become public, my anonymity blown by Forbes and family alike. Universities would court me, society would suddenly find me fascinating, and my father would probably take credit for my success. But tonight? Tonight I drove back to my tiny apartment, thinking about the kids in my programs. The ones coding on borrowed laptops, dreaming of MIT despite empty bank accounts. The ones my father would dismiss as charity cases, not knowing they were future founders. My phone rang. Dean Morrison again. Ms. Brennan, I'm sorry, but Yale just announced they're renaming their building after you regardless of your wishes for anonymity. Of course they did. Harvard's following suit. Princeton wants to discuss a Brennan campus. This is becoming competitive. Let them compete. More money for students. Your father will be proud. I thought about Dad, probably recalculating my value in his spreadsheets, adding my worth to the family total. Maybe, I said. Or maybe he'll learn that pride, like wealth, means more when it's earned. The dedication ceremony? Make it public. Full press. And Dean Morrison? Make sure to mention that the building is specifically for students whose parents think they can't afford college. Sometimes the best revenge is proving everyone wrong. With $50 million. With $50 million of opportunity. There's a difference. I hung up and parked outside my building, looking up at my small windows. Inside were the grant proposals I'd review tomorrow, the kids I'd counsel, the work that mattered regardless of my bank balance. Dad had been right about planning for the future. He'd just been wrong about what future mattered most. Not my hypothetical children's tuition, but real children's potential. Not generational wealth, but generational change. Not proving I could afford success, but redefining what success afforded. The snow kept falling, covering Connecticut in clean white possibility. Tomorrow, my family would adjust to their new reality, the failure who'd outsucceeded them all. But tonight, I opened my laptop and started reviewing scholarship applications. 300 million in opportunities, waiting to prove that the best investment wasn't in hedge funds or trust funds. It was in kids whose parents, like mine, couldn't imagine what they were capable of. Turns out, I could afford college after all. For everyone.